Hello there, welcome back to the channel. This is Nerd World Empire, and this episode is on the Romulan minefields of the Romulan Star Empire. No connection. These mines were in operation during the 22nd century, but before we get started on talking about this weapon of defensive warfare, please like, share, subscribe, comment down below if you remember the episode. This episode was the first contact between humans and Romulans, and would begin the Romulan fascination with humans from this point going forwards. And with that said, let's talk about them. First contact with the Romulans was made in 2152 when the NX-01 Enterprise entered a supposedly uninhabited and unclaimed star system, not realizing that the Romulans had recently expanded and decided to annex it but not tell anyone. Pesky Romulans. They had deployed a minefield in orbit of the planet that the Enterprise was approaching, and then the minefield had allowed the Enterprise to enter but wasn't really going to let it leave. The first detonation of one of the mines severely damaged the Enterprise. A second mine had attached itself to the hull but had failed to detonate. This was because the Romulans used a very primitive arming mechanism on the weapons, which basically failed when the weapon attached itself magnetically to the hull. This was because the mines used a rather primitive baridium power cell, which had resulted in the failure to detonate. The mines, though, did have several very advanced features. They were actually extremely explosive. They utilized a tri-cobalt explosive device, which was similar in basic spec to the spatial missiles used by the NX-01, the Triton series missiles, but were significantly more powerful at approximately 1/4 of a kiloton explosion. They were designed as an anti-starship mine and in theory should have detonated on contact, but as I said, due to the primitive arming mechanism on the mine, it had failed to detonate, giving the Starfleet personnel time to go out in the hull and attempt to dislodge it. The reason the Enterprise didn't detect the mines is they utilized a rather primitive cloaking device, similar to the one utilized by some other powers at the time period, such as the Romulans, the Suliban, the Xyrillians, but this was a rather crude version. The Enterprise, using modified sensors, which it had gained through, wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey, was able to detect the minefield, but not significantly able to maneuver out of it due to the fact that this mine was attached to the hull. Then the owners of the mines would turn up, the Romulans. Now, two Romulan birds of prey would decloak, which were probably there to augment the defenses of the system, not just utilize the mines. Now, it's unlikely the Romulans would have given away their true numbers in this, so I'm going to assume that there were actually more than two birds of prey in this system. And being generous for once, they decided to let the Enterprise go as long as it detached the hull plating like it was intending on doing to dislodge the mine and just leave. Personally, I think if they really weren't on that level of hostile terms and were feeling that generous, they could have offered to remove the mine themselves and simply let the Enterprise go, as it was clearly a mistake. But Romulans can be dicks, can't they? Gotta love the Romulans. But yeah, these mines were highly explosive, deadly, and they were cloaked, but they were rather primitive with their explosive arming mechanism, but they were very destructive, all things considered. The Romulans used these as an area denial weapon, while their limited forces were able to police a wider area, meaning they didn't have to maintain a permanent presence at the planet that they were protecting, of course, because that's what minefields are meant to do. If the Enterprise had continued to attempt to navigate the minefield, the vessel would have been likely torn apart by these incredibly explosive devices. Some interesting random facts about these mines: if tampered with, they would actually anchor themselves more to the ship that they were on. This was probably, again, a deficiency within the arming mechanism. It probably should have utilized all this in the first place, but in his attempts to disarm the mine, Reed ended up getting stabbed by one of the legs of the mine as it anchored itself more to the hull and continued its stupid arming process. Random side fact: the actual explosive power of these mines, even though it was the 22nd century, were twice as powerful as cobalt bombs that were mentioned 100 years later, at equivalent to 250 tons of TNT per mine, which, that's a lot of explosion. Though we don't encounter these mines again, it is likely the Romulans continue to use these mines for many years to come, including during the upcoming Earth-Romulan War that would take place just a few short years after these initial events of first contact. But with that said, remember, it'll be alright. Soon be Christmas.
I just want to take this moment to thank you for watching that video. If you liked what you saw, please check out my social links in the description box below to Instagram and Twitter and others, and also is down there a link to my Patreon page where you can support this channel and the others as I try to grow this franchise and do this more regularly. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you for watching, and bye bye.